When the most feared mafia boss in the city vanished 20 years ago, he left behind a broken wife and two children who learned to live without him. He chose power, money, and another woman over the family that had stood beside him through blood and darkness. Now, on a freezing October night, he's back, not as the ruthless kingpin who once controlled everything, but as a dying man with nothing left but regrets. The woman he destroyed has built an empire of her own. The question is, will she let him through the door or leave him in the cold where he belongs? If you want to see how this story unfolds, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down in sheets that October night, hammering against the windows of Vivian Cole's house like it was trying to break through. She stood in her kitchen, barefoot on the cold tile, staring at a cup of tea she'd forgotten to drink. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Her daughter Elena lived across town now, and her son Nico had his own place downtown. 20 years of raising them alone, and now the silence felt heavier than all those years of chaos combined. The doorbell rang. Vivian froze. Nobody came by this late. Not her kids, who always called first. Not her business partners, who knew better than to show up unannounced. She set the cup down and walked toward the door, her mind already running through possibilities. Deliveries, wrong address, some kid selling something. She opened it. The man standing on her doorstep looked like a ghost wearing someone else's clothes. Older, thinner. The sharp edges that used to define Roman DeLuca's face had gone soft, almost fragile. His hair, once jet black and slicked back with the kind of precision that screamed control, was now streaked with gray and falling loose around his temples. He wore an expensive coat, but it hung on him wrong, like he'd lost too much weight too fast. For 5 full seconds, Vivian couldn't speak. Her brain refused to process what her eyes were seeing. "Vivian," he said. His voice cracked on her name. She felt her hand tighten on the door frame. 20 years. 20 years since she'd heard that voice say her name. 20 years since he'd walked out of this house and never looked back. "No," she said. "Please, I know I don't. No." She started to close the door. Roman put his hand up, not touching the door but hovering there. "I'm dying." Vivian stopped. She hated herself for stopping, but she did. "I don't have anyone else," Roman said. His eyes, which used to cut through people like glass, looked hollow. "I don't have anywhere to go." "That's not my problem." "I know." The rain kept falling. Water dripped off the edge of the porch roof, splashing onto Roman's shoulder. He didn't move. Vivian stared at him, her chest tight with something that felt like rage and grief rolled into one suffocating knot. Part of her wanted to slam the door in his face and call the police. Part of her wanted to scream at him until her voice gave out. But what came out instead was worse. "Why now?" Roman's jaw worked like he was chewing on words he didn't want to say. "Because I'm out of time." "You were out of time 20 years ago. You just didn't care." "I cared," he said quietly. "I cared wrong." Vivian laughed, sharp and bitter. That's the understatement of the century. She should have shut the door. She knew that. Every logical part of her brain was screaming at her to end this before it went any further. But instead, she stepped back and let him in. Roman walked through the door slowly, like he wasn't sure the floor would hold him. He stood in the entryway, dripping rainwater onto the hardwood, and looked around the house like he was seeing it for the first time. Maybe he was. This wasn't the house they'd lived in together. Vivian had sold that place the year after he left, taken the money, and started over. "You've done well," Roman said. "Don't." "I just meant—" "I know what you meant. Don't do that. Don't stand in my house and act like you're proud of me." Roman nodded and went quiet. Vivian crossed her arms. "What kind of dying?" "Cancer, pancreatic, stage 4. She felt nothing, or maybe she felt too much and it all canceled out. "How long?" 6 months, maybe less." "And you came here because, what? You want me to feel sorry for you?" "No." "Then what?" Roman looked at her, and for the first time since he'd shown up, she saw something real in his face. Fear. Not the kind of fear that came from power or danger, but the kind that came from knowing you were about to run out of chances. "I want to ask for forgiveness," he said. Vivian felt her stomach twist. "You think you can show up here after 20 years and just, what? Say you're sorry and we call it even? No, I don't think that. Then what the hell are you doing here, Roman? He didn't answer right away. He stood there in the middle of her entryway, looking smaller than she'd ever seen him, and finally said, I don't know. I didn't know where else to go. Vivian wanted to hate him. She did hate him. But looking at him now, dying and desperate and pathetic, she couldn't summon the kind of hate that would let her throw him back out into the rain. And that made her angrier than anything else. Sit down, she said, nodding toward the living room. I'll make coffee. Roman moved toward the couch like he was afraid it might disappear if he didn't sit fast enough. Vivian went into the kitchen and started the coffee maker, her hands moving on autopilot while her mind raced. 20 years. She'd spent the first 5 of those years trying to hold herself together while raising 2 kids who kept asking when Daddy was coming home. She'd spent the next 5 building a business from nothing, working 18-hour days just to keep the lights on and food on the table. By year 10, she'd stopped thinking about Roman every day. By year 15, she'd stopped thinking about him at all, except on the hard nights when Elena came home crying about some boy who'd ghosted her, or when Nico got into fights at school because some kid said something about his absent father, and now he was back. She poured 2 cups of black coffee and carried them into the living room. Roman took his without a word. Vivian sat in the chair across from him, as far away as the room allowed. Start talking, she said. Roman wrapped both hands around the mug like he was trying to steal its warmth. I don't know where to start. How about the part where you left? He flinched. I thought I was building something. I thought if I could get bigger, stronger, more connected, I could give you everything, give the kids everything. We didn't need everything. We needed you. I know that now. Knowing it now doesn't fix anything. I know that too. Vivian leaned forward. You didn't leave because you were building something, Roman. You left because you got bored. You got restless. And then you met someone younger and shinier, and we stopped being exciting enough for you. Roman's face went gray. Her name was Isabel. I don't care what her name was. He stopped, cleared his throat. She left me 3 years ago, took half of what I had left and disappeared. Vivian felt a cold smile tug at her lips. Karma's a bitch. Yeah, it is. Where's all that power now? All those people who used to be scared of you? Where are they? Roman stared into his coffee. Gone. Most of them are dead or in prison. The ones who aren't don't want anything to do with me. So you came here. So I came here. Vivian sat back, her arms still crossed. You said you wanted forgiveness. From who? Me? The kids? All of you, if you'll listen. Elena and Nico don't even know you're alive. I told them you were dead. Roman looked up, shock spreading across his face. You, what? I told them you died in a car accident when they were little. It was easier than explaining why their father chose someone else over them. Vivian, don't. Her voice came out hard and sharp. You don't get to be upset about that. You left. You made that choice. I had to clean up the mess. Roman set his coffee down, his hands shaking. I need to see them. No. Please. They think you're dead, Roman. They've been living with that for 20 years. You don't get to show up and tear that open just because you're running out of time. I'm their father. Vivian stood up, her whole body vibrating with rage. You stopped being their father the second you walked out that door. You don't earn that title back just because you're dying. Roman stood too, slower, his face pale. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve that. But they deserve the truth. The truth? Vivian's voice rose. The truth is that you abandoned your family for another woman. The truth is that you didn't call, didn't write, didn't send a single damn dollar to help raise your own children. The truth is that I had to lie to them because the real story was too ugly to tell. That's the truth, Roman. You want me to dump that on them now? Yes. His voice was quiet but steady. If it means they know I'm sorry, if it means they get a chance to tell me what I did to them, then yes. Vivian stared at him, her chest heaving. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw him out. But underneath all that anger was something worse, a tiny, traitorous part of her that wondered if he was right. They're not kids anymore, she said finally. They're adults. They have their own lives. You don't get to blow those up because you're dying. I know. If I do this, if I even think about doing this, it's on my terms, not yours. You don't show up at their houses, you don't call them, you don't do anything unless I say so. Understand? Roman nodded. Understood. And if they don't want to see you, you walk away. No arguments, no begging, you just go. Okay. Vivian turned away from him, her hands curling into fists at her sides. You can stay tonight. Guest room upstairs, second door on the left. Tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. Roman didn't respond. He just stood there, looking lost in the middle of her living room, until Vivian walked away and left him alone with his coffee and his regrets. Upstairs, Vivian sat on the edge of her bed and stared at her phone. She'd have to call Elena and Nico tomorrow. She'd have to tell them the truth, that their father wasn't dead, that he'd been alive all this time, that he was here now asking for a second chance he didn't deserve. Her hands shook as she typed out a message to Elena, then deleted it. Typed another one to Nico, then deleted that too. How do you tell your children that you lied to them for 20 years? How do you explain that you did it to protect them, even if it was the wrong choice? She didn't have the answers. All she had was the sick feeling in her gut that Roman's return was going to rip open wounds she'd spent 2 decades trying to heal. Downstairs, Roman sat on the couch and stared at the wall. The house smelled different than he remembered, cleaner, newer. Like Vivian had scrubbed away every trace of the life they'd had together and replaced it with something better. He didn't blame her. He thought about Isabel, the woman he'd left Vivian for. She'd been 26 when they met, beautiful and sharp and hungry for the kind of life he could give her. He'd been 42, drunk on power, and stupid enough to think it would last forever. It hadn't. Isabel had stayed with him for 15 years, right up until the money started drying up and the enemies started circling. Then she'd taken what she could carry and vanished. No goodbye. No explanation. Just gone. He'd tried to hate her for it, but he couldn't. Not when he'd done the exact same thing to Vivian. Now he was here, sitting in the house of the woman he'd destroyed, begging for scraps of forgiveness he didn't deserve. And the worst part was, he didn't even know if it would matter. Maybe Elena and Nico would hear him out and tell him to go to hell. Maybe they'd refuse to see him at all. Maybe he'd die alone, just like he deserved. But he had to try. Not because it would fix anything, but because dying without trying felt like the final, unforgivable sin. The next morning, Vivian came downstairs to find Roman sitting at the kitchen table, looking like he hadn't slept. She didn't ask. She just poured herself coffee and sat across from him. I'm calling Elena and Nico today, she said. Roman nodded. Okay. I'm telling them the truth. All of it. And then I'm asking them if they want to meet you. If they say no, you leave. If they say yes, we do it on neutral ground. Not here, not their places, somewhere public. Whatever you think is best. Vivian studied him. You look terrible. I feel terrible. Good. Roman almost smiled. Almost. You were always honest. Don't do that. Do what? Act like we're old friends reminiscing. We're not. I'm doing this for Elena and Nico, not for you. I know. Vivian stood up, taking her coffee with her. I'll let you know what they say. She left him sitting there and went into her office, closing the door behind her. Then she picked up her phone and called Elena. It rang 3 times before her daughter answered. Hey, Mom, what's up? Vivian closed her eyes. I need to tell you something, and it's going to be hard to hear. There was a pause on the other end. Okay, you're scaring me. Your father isn't dead. Silence. Elena? What? Her daughter's voice came out small and confused. What are you talking about? Your father, Roman, he's alive, he's here, and he wants to see you and Nico. Another long silence. Then, quietly, I don't understand. Vivian felt tears burn at the corners of her eyes, but she kept her voice steady. I lied to you. When you were little, I told you he died because I didn't know how else to explain why he left. But he didn't die. He chose someone else. And he's been gone ever since. He's been alive this whole time. Elena's voice cracked. This whole time, and you... Mom, how could you... I'm sorry, I thought I was protecting you. Protecting me? Elena's voice rose, sharp and angry. You lied to me for 20 years. You let me grieve someone who wasn't even dead. I know, and I'm sorry. Why is he here now? Vivian swallowed hard. He's dying. Cancer. He doesn't have long, and he wants to ask for forgiveness. Elena didn't respond right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was ice. I don't want to see him. You don't have to. Does Nico know? Not yet. I'm calling him next. Don't. Elena's voice shook. Don't do this over the phone. If you're going to destroy his life too, at least do it in person. The line went dead. Vivian sat there, staring at her phone, feeling like the floor had just dropped out from under her. She'd known it would be bad, but hearing the betrayal in Elena's voice was worse than she'd imagined. She called Nico next. He answered on the first ring. Mom, what's wrong? Can you come over? I need to talk to you and Elena together. Is everything okay? No, but I'll explain when you get here. 2 hours later, Elena and Nico sat on Vivian's couch, looking like they'd been hit by a truck. Vivian had told them everything, the truth about Roman, the lies she'd told, the fact that he was upstairs in the guest room right now. Nico stood up, pacing. So he's just here in this house? Yes. And you let him in? Yes. Why? Nico's voice was rising. Why would you do that? Because he's your father. He's not my father, Nico shouted. A father doesn't walk out and disappear for 20 years. A father doesn't choose some other woman over his own kids. Elena sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. She looked pale and hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside her and left only the shell. Elena, Vivian said gently, say something. Elena looked up, her eyes dry but filled with something dark and cold. I want to see him. Nico turned to stare at her. What? I want to see him, Elena repeated. I want to look him in the face and ask him why. You don't owe him that. I know, but I owe it to myself. Nico ran both hands through his hair, looking lost. This is insane. Probably, Elena said, but I'm doing it anyway. Vivian stood up. If you're sure, I'm sure. Then I'll bring him down. Roman came downstairs slowly, his hand gripping the railing like he needed it to stay upright. When he reached the bottom and saw Elena and Nico standing in the living room, he stopped. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Elena spoke, her voice steady and cold. So you're him. Roman nodded. I'm him. You don't look like much. I'm not. Nico stepped forward, his jaw tight. Why are you here? Roman met his son's eyes. Because I'm dying, and I wanted to see you before I go. That's it? That's the whole reason? No, I also wanted to say I'm sorry. Nico laughed, harsh and bitter. You're sorry. 20 years, and that's what you've got? You're sorry. I know it's not enough. Damn right it's not enough. Nico's hands curled into fists. Do you have any idea what it was like growing up without you? Do you know how many times I got into fights because kids at school said my dad was dead and I was lying about it? Do you know how many nights I laid awake wondering what I did wrong to make you leave? Roman's face crumpled. Nothing. You didn't do anything wrong. Then why did you go? Because I was selfish. Because I thought power and money mattered more than you, and I was wrong. Elena moved forward now, standing beside Nico. Who was she? Her name was Isabel. Did you love her? Roman hesitated. I thought I did. More than us? No, never more than you. But I was too stupid to see that until it was too late. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. Where is she now? Gone. She left me 3 years ago. Good, Elena said flatly. I hope she took everything. Roman nodded. She did. The room went quiet. Vivian stood off to the side, watching her children face the man who destroyed their childhood, and she felt her heart break all over again. Finally, Nico spoke. I don't forgive you. I know. And I don't want you in my life. I understand. But, Nico's voice cracked, but I want to know why. I want to hear you say it, all of it, every reason you left, every lie you told yourself. I want to know what was so damn important that you threw us away for it. Roman looked at his son, and for the first time, tears started sliding down his face. Okay, I'll tell you everything. And he did. Roman stood in the middle of Vivian's living room, his hands hanging at his sides like he'd forgotten what to do with them. Nico stared at him with eyes that could cut steel, and Elena had gone so still she barely looked like she was breathing. Vivian stayed near the doorway, arms crossed, watching this whole thing unfold like a car crash she couldn't stop. Roman cleared his throat. I met Isabel at a fundraiser, one of those fancy charity things where rich people pretend to care about poor people for a night. She was working there, serving drinks, and He stopped, his jaw working. I noticed her. That's it? Nico's voice came out harsh. You noticed her? Let him finish, Elena said quietly. Roman nodded, grateful for the reprieve he didn't deserve. She was young, 26. I was 42, running half the city, and I felt old. Like everything good had already happened, and all that was left was maintaining what I'd built. And then she smiled at me, and I felt young again, powerful again. So you threw us away because some woman smiled at you? Nico took a step forward. That's the big explanation? No, it's more complicated than that. Then uncomplicated. Roman looked at Vivian, but she gave him nothing. No sympathy, no help, just that same cold stare she'd had since he showed up. He turned back to Nico. I was drowning, Roman said. In the work, in the violence, in all the things I had to do to keep the empire running. Your mother... He glanced at Vivian again. She was the only thing keeping me human. She was the conscience I didn't have, and I resented her for it. Vivian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. I resented that she made me feel guilty, Roman continued. I resented that she wanted me home for dinner when I had people to meet and deals to close. I resented that she looked at me like I was capable of being better when all I wanted was to stop pretending I wasn't exactly what everyone said I was, a criminal who'd gotten lucky. So you left? Elena said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. You left because Mom expected too much from you. I left because I was a coward. Because it was easier to start over with someone who didn't know what I'd become than to face the man I'd turned into. Nico shook his head, his hands balled into fists. You keep talking about yourself, about how hard it was for you. What about us? What about the fact that you had 2 kids who needed you? I know. Do you? Because it doesn't sound like you do. Roman's face went gray. I thought about you every day. Bullshit. I did. I thought about calling. I thought about coming back, but the longer I stayed away, the harder it got. And Isabel, she made it easy to pretend none of it had happened. She didn't ask about my past. She didn't want to know about the family I'd left behind. She just wanted the version of me I was presenting, and that was enough. Elena stood up, her movement slow and deliberate. She walked toward Roman until she was close enough to see the lines carved into his face, the gray in his hair, the hollowness in his eyes. Did you even try to find out what happened to us? She asked. Roman swallowed. Yes. And? I kept tabs. Through people I trusted. I knew when you graduated high school. I knew when Nico got into that fight and broke his hand. I knew when your mother started her business and turned it into something real. Vivian's voice cut through the room like a knife. You knew all of that, and you never once reached out? Roman turned to her. What would I have said? Sorry I abandoned you, but I'm doing great with my new life? There was nothing I could say that wouldn't make it worse. So you just watched, Vivian said, like we were some TV show you could tune into whenever you felt like it. I'm not defending it. I'm just telling you the truth. The truth, Vivian repeated, her voice dripping with contempt. The truth is you're a coward who ran away and then didn't have the guts to come back until you were dying and had nowhere else to go. Roman didn't argue. He just stood there and took it. Nico moved closer, his voice shaking with rage. Did you love her, Isabel? Did you actually love her, or was she just an escape? Roman looked at his son, and for the first time since he'd started talking, he seemed to struggle with the answer. I don't know. I thought I did. But looking back, I think I just loved the idea of her, the way she made me feel like I was still in control of something. And when did that stop working? When she left. When I realized she'd only ever wanted the money and the power, not me. By then, everything was falling apart. The business, the connections, the empire I'd built. and I had nothing left except the knowledge that I'd traded my real family for a fantasy. Elena's voice came out quiet, almost a whisper. How did she leave you? Roman's shoulders sagged. I came home one day and half the house was empty. She'd taken jewelry, cash, anything she could sell, left a note that said she'd met someone younger and didn't see the point in sticking around for the decline. Karma, Elena said softly. Yeah. Karma. Nico turned away, pacing toward the window. So what do you want from us? You want us to feel sorry for you? You want us to say it's okay that you destroyed our childhood because you got what was coming to you? No. I want you to know the truth. I want you to know that leaving you was the worst decision I ever made, and that no amount of money or power or ego was worth what I lost. That doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't. Then why are you here? Nico spun around, his eyes burning. Why come back now? Why not just die alone like you deserve? Roman flinched, but he held his ground. Because I wanted you to have the chance to tell me what I did to you. I wanted to hear it, to sit with it, to know exactly what I destroyed. Elena moved back to the couch and sat down, her hands folded in her lap. Okay, you want to hear it? I'll tell you. Roman nodded. I was 7 when you left, Elena began. Her voice was steady, controlled, but underneath it was something raw and bleeding. I remember waking up one morning and asking Mom where you were. She said you had to go away for work. I believed her. I believed her for weeks. I kept waiting for you to come home. And you never did. Roman's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't look away. By the time I was 10, Mom told us you were dead. Car accident, she said. Quick and painless. I cried for days. I wore black to school. Other kids made fun of me, but I didn't care because I thought you were gone forever. And you know what the worst part was? What? Roman's voice cracked. Part of me was relieved, because at least if you were dead, it meant you hadn't chosen to leave. It meant something took you away from us, instead of you just deciding we weren't worth staying for. Roman's face crumpled, and he covered it with his hands. I grew up thinking every man I ever loved would disappear, Elena continued. I sabotaged every relationship I had because I was so scared they'd leave me the way you did. I pushed people away before they could hurt me, and I blamed Mom for it. I blamed her for not being enough to make you stay, even though it was never her fault. It was yours. Roman lowered his hands. His face was wet, his eyes red. I'm sorry. I don't care if you're sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I spent thinking I wasn't good enough for my own father to stick around. Nico stepped forward again, his voice quieter now, but no less intense. You want to know what it was like for me? Roman nodded. I became you, Nico said. Or at least I tried to. I got into fights. I acted tough. I made sure nobody could get close enough to hurt me, because if my own father didn't think I was worth staying for, why would anyone else? Nico, I'm not done. Nico's jaw tightened. I spent years trying to figure out what I did wrong. Was I too loud, too quiet, too needy, not smart enough, not strong enough? I replayed every memory I had of you over and over, looking for the moment where I screwed up and made you leave. You didn't do anything wrong. I know that now, but I didn't know it then, and by the time I figured it out, I'd already built my whole life around the idea that I wasn't enough. Roman looked at her, surprised by the question. It fell apart. The people I trusted turned on me. The ones who didn't get arrested got killed. The business dried up. By the time Isabel left, I had maybe 10% of what I'd built, and most of that was dirty money I couldn't touch without ending up in prison. Where is it now? Gone. Lawyers, medical bills, paying off old debts so I didn't get shot before the cancer could finish me off. Nico laughed bitterly. So you're not just dying, you're broke too. Yeah. Good. Roman nodded slowly. I deserve that. Damn right you do. Elena stood up again, restless. Do you have any idea what Mom went through after you left? Roman looked at Vivian. I can imagine. No, you can't, Elena said sharply. She had 2 kids to raise, no job, and a reputation in this city as the wife of a criminal. Nobody wanted to hire her. Nobody wanted to help her. She had to start from nothing and build everything herself while we were asking her every day when you were coming back. I know. No, you don't, Elena's voice rose. You don't know what it's like to watch your mother cry herself to sleep and then wake up the next morning and pretend everything's fine so her kids don't fall apart. You don't know what it's like to realize your mom is working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on because the man who promised to take care of her walked away. Vivian's voice was quiet but firm. Elena, no, Mom, he needs to hear this. Elena turned back to Roman, her eyes blazing. She built a multi-million-dollar company from scratch. She put us both through college without taking a single loan. She did all of that without you, and she did it better than you ever could have. Roman looked at Vivian, something like awe in his expression. I always knew you were stronger than me. Don't, Vivian said coldly. Don't try to turn this into some compliment. I didn't do it to prove anything to you. I did it because I had to. Because my children needed a parent who wouldn't abandon them. Roman's shoulders slumped. I know. Nico walked over to the window and stared out at the rain, which had started up again. What do you want from us, Roman? And don't say forgiveness, because we both know that's not happening. Roman took a shaky breath. I want the chance to answer your questions. I want to sit here and let you tear me apart if that's what you need. And when I die, I want you to know that I spent my last days facing what I did instead of running from it. That's it? That's it. Elena crossed her arms, mirroring her mother. And if we tell you to leave and never come back, then I leave and never come back. Just like that? Just like that. Vivian stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. I think we need a break. This is too much all at once. Nico turned from the window. I need air. Me too, Elena said. Roman looked between them, his face pale and drawn. Can I see you again? Nico and Elena exchanged a glance. Some silent conversation passed between them, the kind only siblings who'd survived the same war could have. Finally, Nico spoke. Maybe. We'll let Mom know. Okay. Elena grabbed her coat. We're going to leave now, and you're going to stay here and think about everything we just said. I will. Good. They left without saying goodbye, the door closing behind them with a soft click that somehow felt louder than if they'd slammed it. Vivian watched them go, then turned to Roman. You're lucky they agreed to see you at all, she said. I know. Don't waste it. Roman nodded, looking smaller than ever. Vivian, don't. She held up a hand. Whatever you're about to say, I don't want to hear it. This isn't about me and you. This is about you and them. I know, but I need you to know I'm sorry for all of it. Vivian's expression didn't soften. Your apology doesn't mean anything to me, Roman. It's 20 years too late and about $1 million short. I'm not asking you to forgive me. Good, because I won't. She left him standing there and went upstairs. Roman heard her footsteps cross the floor above him, heard a door close. He stood alone in the living room, surrounded by the ghosts of the life he'd thrown away. And for the first time in 20 years, he let himself really feel it. The weight of what he'd done crashed over him like a wave, and he sank onto the couch, his head in his hands, sobbing in a way he hadn't since he was a child. Outside, Elena and Nico sat in Elena's car, neither of them moving. The rain hammered against the windshield, blurring the world beyond into shapes and shadows. I can't believe Mom lied to us, Nico said finally. Elena stared straight ahead. She was trying to protect us. By making us think he was dead? Would you have rather known the truth? That he chose someone else over us? Nico didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was rough. I don't know. Me neither. They sat in silence for a while, the rain filling the space between them. I hate him, Nico said. Me too. But part of me... He stopped, his hands gripping the steering wheel even though the car wasn't moving. Part of me is glad he's here, because now I can tell him exactly what he did to us. Elena nodded. I know what you mean. Do you think we'll regret it, seeing him? Probably. But I think we'd regret it more if we didn't. Nico turned to look at her. When did you get so smart? Elena smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I've been faking it my whole life. Yeah, me too. They sat there for another few minutes, then Nico started the car. You want to get a drink? I want to get several drinks. Good, because I'm buying. They pulled out of the driveway and drove off into the rain, leaving Vivian's house and everything inside it behind. Back inside, Vivian lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. She felt hollowed out, like someone had reached inside her chest and scooped out everything that mattered. She'd spent 20 years building walls around the hurt Roman had caused, and now he'd shown up and torn them all down in a single night. Her phone buzzed, a text from Elena. "We're okay. Or we will be. Love you, Mom." Vivian felt tears slide down her temples and into her hair. She texted back, "Love you too, both of you." She set the phone down and closed her eyes, but she didn't sleep. Downstairs, she could hear Roman moving around, the creak of floorboards under his weight. Part of her wanted to go down there and throw him out. Part of her wanted to scream at him until her voice gave out. But mostly, she just felt tired. The next morning, Roman woke up on Vivian's couch with a crick in his neck and the worst headache he'd had in months. The cancer medication made everything worse. Sleep, pain, nausea, all of it. He sat up slowly, his joints protesting, and found Vivian in the kitchen making coffee. "You look like hell," she said without turning around. "Feel like it too." She poured 2 cups and set one on the counter in front of him. He took it, grateful. "Elena and Nico texted me last night," Vivian said. "They want to see you again, but it has to be on their terms." Roman's head snapped up. "They do?" "Don't get excited. They're not doing it for you. They're doing it for themselves." "I understand." "Do you?" Vivian turned to face him, her expression hard. "Because if you screw this up, if you hurt them any worse than you already have, I will make sure you regret it for whatever time you have left." Roman met her eyes. "I won't screw it up." "You better not." She handed him a piece of paper with an address on it. "This Saturday, 2 o'clock. It's a cafe downtown, public, neutral. If you're late, they're leaving." "I'll be there." "And Roman," Vivian's voice dropped, "if you die before Saturday, I'm telling them you were too much of a coward to show up." Roman almost smiled. "Fair enough." Vivian left him with his coffee and went to get ready for work. She had a business to run, deals to close, a life that didn't revolve around Roman DeLuca and his deathbed apologies. She'd given him a place to stay because her children needed closure, but that didn't mean she had to like it. Roman spent the rest of the week in Vivian's guest room, weak and sick, and trying not to think about Saturday. The cancer was eating him alive from the inside out, and the medication only dulled the edges. He'd already outlived the doctor's initial estimate by 2 months, but he could feel time running out. On Friday night, Vivian knocked on his door. "What?" he called. She opened the door and stepped inside, her face unreadable. "I need to tell you something." Roman sat up in bed. "Okay. If you're doing this to make yourself feel better about dying, it won't work. Elena and Nico aren't going to absolve you. They're not going to make your last days peaceful and redemptive. You're going to carry what you did all the way to the grave, and there's nothing you can do about it." Roman nodded slowly. "I know." "Then why are you here?" "Because they deserve the truth, and because I deserve to hear what I did to them." Vivian studied him for a long moment. "You really have changed, haven't you?" "I don't know if I've changed or if I've just finally stopped lying to myself." "Maybe they're the same thing." She left without another word, closing the door softly behind her. Saturday came too fast. Roman got dressed in the nicest clothes he had left, a shirt that hung loose on his frame and pants he had to cinch tight with a belt. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. The fierce, untouchable mafia boss was gone. All that remained was a sick old man with more regrets than days left to live. Vivian drove him to the cafe without speaking. She pulled up to the curb and put the car in park. "You've got 2 hours," she said. "After that, I'm picking you up whether you're done or not." "Thank you." "I'm not doing this for you." "I know." Roman got out of the car and walked into the cafe. Elena and Nico were already there, sitting at a corner table with their backs to the wall. They looked up when he walked in, and for a second, nobody moved. Then Nico gestured to the empty chair across from them. "Sit down." Roman sat, and the reckoning continued. The cafe was half empty, which was probably why Elena had chosen it. Fewer witnesses to whatever was about to happen. Roman sat across from his children, his hands flat on the table because he didn't know what else to do with them. A waitress came by, and Nico ordered coffee for all 3 of them without asking Roman what he wanted. When she left, Elena spoke first. "We have questions." "Okay, and you're going to answer them. All of them. No deflecting, no excuses, no making yourself sound better than you were." Roman nodded. "I'll tell you the truth." Nico leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed. "Start with the day you left. What happened that morning?" Roman swallowed hard. I woke up early. You were both still asleep. Your mother was in the kitchen making breakfast. I remember she was humming something. I don't remember what. And I stood in the hallway watching her, thinking this was the last time I'd see her do that. So you'd already decided, Elena said. Yeah, I'd decided the night before. Did you tell her? No, I waited until you two were at school. Then I packed a bag, left a note, and walked out. Nico's jaw tightened. What did the note say? It said I was leaving, that I'd met someone else, that I'd send money for you and the kids. Did you? Elena asked. Send money? Roman looked down at his hands. For the first 6 months, then Isabel told me I was being stupid, that Vivian would be fine, that I needed to cut ties completely if I wanted to move on. And you listened to her? Yeah, I listened to her. The waitress came back with their coffee. Nobody touched it. She lingered for a second, reading the tension in the air, then hurried away. Elena picked up her cup and held it between her hands without drinking. Did you ever think about coming back? In those first few months, did you ever regret it? Roman met her eyes. Every day. Then why didn't you? Because I was ashamed, and because the longer I stayed away, the easier it was to pretend I'd made the right choice. That's not an answer, Nico said sharply. That's an excuse. You're right. The real answer is that I was a coward. I didn't want to face what I'd done, so I kept running. Elena set her cup down carefully, like she was afraid if she moved too fast, she'd throw it. Tell us about Isabel. What was so special about her that she was worth destroying your family? Roman looked up at the ceiling, then back at his daughter. She was beautiful, young. She laughed at my jokes and made me feel like I was the most important person in the room. Your mother, He stopped, reconsidered. Your mother knew me too well. She saw all the ugly parts I tried to hide. Isabel didn't ask questions. She just took what I gave her and acted like it was enough. So she was easy, Elena said flatly. Yeah, she was easy. Nico leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. Did you love Mom? Ever? Yes. More than I knew how to handle. That's a cop-out. Maybe, but it's true. I loved your mother so much it scared me. She made me want to be better, and I hated that because being better meant admitting I wasn't good enough. With Isabel, I could be exactly who I was, and she didn't care. Elena's voice went cold. You mean she didn't care that you were a criminal? She cared about what the money could buy. She didn't care how I got it. And Mom did. Your mother cared about everything, about me, about you two, about the kind of man I was becoming, and I couldn't stand it. Nico stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. People at nearby tables looked over. He didn't care. I need a minute. He walked out of the cafe, and through the window Roman watched him pace on the sidewalk, his hands running through his hair. Elena stayed seated, her face unreadable. He's going to break something if he doesn't calm down, she said. Should I? No, stay here. Roman nodded. They sat in silence, the space between them thick with everything unsaid. After a minute, Elena spoke again. What was it like, living with her? Lonely. Elena raised an eyebrow. You left your family for her and you were lonely? She didn't know me. Not really. She knew the version of me I showed her, but that wasn't real. It was just a performance. And after a while, I got tired of performing. But you stayed. I stayed because leaving her would have meant admitting I'd made a mistake, and I wasn't ready to do that. So you wasted 15 years of your life on a lie. Yeah, I did. Nico came back inside, his face flushed but calmer. He sat down and picked up his coffee, taking a long drink. Okay, I'm good. You sure? Elena asked. No, but we're doing this anyway. He turned to Roman. Tell me about the business, the criminal stuff. What exactly were you doing that was so important you couldn't be a father? Roman shifted in his seat. A lot of things. Started with loan sharking, moved into protection rackets, then drugs, then real estate. By the time I left, I was running operations in 4 states and pulling in more money than I knew what to do with. And Mom knew? She knew some of it. I kept her out of the worst parts, but yeah, she knew. Did she help you? In the beginning, yeah. She was good with numbers, good at making things look legitimate on paper. But after you two were born, she wanted out. She wanted me to go straight, find something legal, build a real life. And you didn't want to, Elena said. I didn't know how. The business was all I had. Without it, I was just some guy who'd gotten lucky. And I was terrified of being ordinary. Nico laughed bitterly. So you chose crime over your kids because you were afraid of being boring. When you say it like that, it sounds stupid. That's because it is stupid. Roman didn't argue. He just sat there and took it. Elena leaned forward. What happened when it all fell apart? When did you realize you'd lost everything? Roman's face went gray. About 3 years ago. I had a partner, a guy I'd worked with for 10 years. He got busted on a weapons charge and decided to cut a deal. Gave up names, locations, everything. The feds started closing in, and everyone I'd trusted either disappeared or turned on me. And Isabel? She saw which way the wind was blowing and got out. Took about $500,000 in cash and jewelry and vanished. I haven't heard from her since. Good, Elena said. I hope she's miserable. She's probably not. She was smart enough to get out before it all burned down. Nico drummed his fingers on the table. So you lost the money, lost the power, lost the woman you threw us away for, and then what? Then I got sick. Started feeling tired all the time, losing weight, couldn't keep food down. Went to a doctor and found out I had cancer, stage 4, terminal. How long have you known? About 8 months. Elena's voice sharpened. And you waited 8 months to come find us? I didn't think I had the right. You didn't. You still don't. But at least you could have been honest from the start instead of waiting until you were desperate. Roman nodded slowly. You're right. They sat in silence again. The waitress came back, refilled their coffee cups, and left without saying a word. The cafe was filling up now, the lunch rush starting. People laughed and talked around them, completely unaware of the family tearing itself apart in the corner. Nico spoke next, his voice quieter than before. What was the worst thing you ever did? In the business, I mean. Roman looked at him for a long moment. You really want to know? Yeah, I had a guy killed. He'd stolen from me a lot of money, and he thought he could get away with it, so I had him taken care of. Elena's face went pale. You killed someone? I didn't pull the trigger, but I gave the order, so yeah, I killed him. Nico stared at him. How old were we? You were 9. Elena was 11. Jesus Christ, Elena whispered. There were other things too. People I hurt, families I destroyed. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I was some misunderstood anti-hero. I was a criminal, a bad one. And a lot of people suffered because of me. Nico pushed his coffee away like it was making him sick. And you came home to us after doing that. You sat at the dinner table and acted like everything was normal. Yeah. How? I told myself I was protecting you, that everything I did was to make sure you had a good life. But that was a lie. I did it because I liked the power. I liked being feared. And I was good at compartmentalizing. Elena stood up this time, her hands shaking. I need air. She walked out and Nico followed her. Roman sat alone at the table, surrounded by half-empty coffee cups and the wreckage of his confessions. He felt like he was being flayed alive, stripped down to the bone. And the worst part was, he knew he deserved every second of it. Outside, Elena leaned against the building, breathing hard. Nico stood next to her, not touching her, but close enough that she knew he was there. I can't do this, she said. Yes, you can. He had someone killed, Nico, while we were living in the same house, while we were sleeping down the hall. I know. And Mom knew. She had to have known. Maybe. Or maybe she didn't. Either way, it doesn't change what we're doing here. Elena turned to look at him. What are we doing here, really? We're making him face what he did. We're making him sit there and admit every ugly thing so that when he dies, he can't pretend he was anything other than what he was. And that's supposed to make us feel better? I don't know, but it's better than letting him walk away thinking we'd forgiven him. Elena nodded, wiping her eyes. Okay, let's go back in. They walked back inside and sat down. Roman looked up at them, his face haggard. I'm sorry, he said. Stop saying that, Nico snapped. Every time you apologize, it sounds more hollow. Then what do you want me to say? Nothing. Just answer our questions and stop trying to make yourself feel better about it. Roman nodded. Okay. Elena took a breath and steadied herself. Did you ever think about us? When you were with her, living that life, did we ever cross your mind? All the time. I don't believe you. I swear. I thought about you every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone I was missing. I didn't let myself dwell on it. I pushed it down and kept moving. That's not thinking about us, Elena said. That's running from us. You're right. Nico leaned forward. What would you have done if we'd tried to find you? If we'd somehow tracked you down and showed up at your door? Roman's face went still. I don't know. Guess. I probably would have sent you away, told you I wasn't your father anymore, made up some story to protect the life I'd built with Isabel. So you would have rejected us a second time? Yeah, probably. Nico's hands curled into fists. You're a piece of shit. I know. No, I don't think you do. I don't think you have any idea what it's like to grow up wondering if you're worth anything at all because the one person who was supposed to love you unconditionally just walked away. Roman's voice came out broken. I'm sorry. I told you to stop saying that. I don't know what else to say. Then say nothing. Just sit there and feel what we've been feeling for 20 years. Roman did. He sat there in silence, his shoulders hunched, his face drawn, and let the weight of their pain crush him. Elena and Nico watched him, neither of them offering comfort or forgiveness. They just watched. After a while, Elena spoke again. Do you regret it? Leaving? More than anything. That's still not enough. I know. If you could go back and change it, would you? Roman looked at her, his eyes red. In a heartbeat. But you can't. No, I can't. Nico stood up, his jaw tight. I think we're done for today. Okay, Roman said quietly. Elena stood too. We'll let Mom know if we want to see you again. Thank you. Don't thank us. We're not doing this for you. They left without another word, walking out of the cafe and into the bright afternoon sun. Roman sat at the table for another 10 minutes, staring at nothing, before he finally got up and walked outside. Vivian was parked at the curb, her face unreadable behind sunglasses. He got in the car. How'd it go? She asked. About as bad as you'd expect. Good. She drove him back to the house in silence. When they got there, Roman went straight to the guest room and closed the door. Vivian stood in the kitchen, listening to the sounds of him moving around upstairs, and felt nothing. Later that night, Elena called. Mom? Yeah, honey. We saw him today. I know. It was... Elena's voice cracked. It was really hard. I'm sorry. Don't be. We needed to do it, but I need to ask you something. Okay. Did you know about the things he did? The people he hurt? Vivian closed her eyes. I knew some of it, not everything. Why didn't you leave him sooner? Because I was scared. I had 2 kids and no money and no skills that would get me a job that paid enough to support us. And I thought... She stopped, her throat tight. I thought if I stayed, I could keep him from getting worse. I thought I could fix him. You can't fix people, Mom. I know that now. Elena was quiet for a moment. I love you. I love you too, baby. We're going to see him again, Nico and me. We're not done yet. Are you sure? No, but we're doing it anyway. After they hung up, Vivian poured herself a glass of wine and sat on the couch in the dark. She thought about all the years she'd spent protecting her children from the truth. And now the truth was sitting upstairs in her guest room, dying slowly and taking everyone's peace with it. Upstairs, Roman lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The cancer was getting worse. He could feel it eating through him, stealing his strength piece by piece. The pain medication made everything fuzzy, but it didn't stop the thoughts. He kept replaying the conversation at the cafe, hearing Elena and Nico's voices cutting into him, stripping him down until there was nothing left but the raw truth of what he'd done. He'd destroyed them, not physically, but in all the ways that mattered. He'd taught them they weren't worth staying for, that love was conditional, that people left when things got hard. And now they were sitting across from him, 2 grown adults who'd spent their whole lives trying to make sense of the damage he'd caused, and all he could do was confirm their worst fears. He was a monster, not because of the crimes he'd committed or the people he'd hurt in the business, but because he'd looked at his own children and decided they weren't enough to make him stay. The next morning, Vivian found an envelope on the kitchen table. Her name was written on it in Roman's handwriting. She opened it. Inside was a letter. Vivian, I know you don't want to hear from me, and I don't blame you, but there are things I need to say, and I'm running out of time to say them. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw you away because I was too stupid and too proud to see it. You gave me everything, your loyalty, your love, your strength, and I repaid you by walking out. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even want it, because I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. Everything I built after you was hollow. Every success felt empty because it wasn't built with you. And when it all came crashing down, the only thing I regretted was that I couldn't go back and choose you instead. You're stronger than I ever was. You always were. And I'm sorry I made you prove it the hard way. I hope when this is over, you can finally stop carrying the weight of what I did and just live. You've earned that. Roman. Vivian read it twice, then folded it and put it back in the envelope. She didn't cry. She didn't feel anything except a dull ache that had been there for so long it felt like part of her body. She left the letter on the counter and went to work. Over the next 3 weeks, Elena and Nico met with Roman 4 more times. Each meeting felt like pulling teeth, slow, painful, and necessary in a way none of them wanted to admit. They met at different places each time. A park bench, a diner on the edge of town, a library reading room where they had to keep their voices down, even when they wanted to scream. Roman answered every question they threw at him. He didn't defend himself, didn't try to soften the edges of what he'd done. He just told them the truth, raw and ugly, until they ran out of things to ask. By the 4th meeting, something had shifted. Not forgiveness, nothing close to that, but a kind of exhausted acceptance that this was as good as it was going to get. They were sitting in the diner, picking at fries neither of them wanted, when Nico asked the question that had been sitting in his chest since the first night Roman showed up. Do you think about dying? Roman looked up from his untouched coffee. All the time. Are you scared? Terrified. Elena studied him. Of what? The pain? No, the pain I can handle. I'm scared of dying alone, of going out knowing I wasted everything that mattered. You did waste it, Nico said flatly. I know. So what do you want from us? Some kind of deathbed reconciliation where we all hold hands and cry and tell you it's okay? No, I don't want that. Then what? Roman set his cup down carefully. I want you to remember me honestly, not as some monster, not as some tragic figure who deserved redemption, just as a man who made terrible choices and spent the rest of his life regretting them. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're asking us to carry your guilt after you're gone. No. I'm asking you not to lie about who I was. Don't make me better in memory than I was in life. Don't soften it for your kids someday. Just tell them the truth, that their grandfather was a selfish bastard who chose wrong and paid for it. Nico leaned back, his arms crossed. Why does that matter to you? Because I don't want anyone making the same mistakes I did. I don't want some kid hearing about me and thinking I was cool or powerful or worth emulating. I want them to hear the whole story and learn from it. Elena picked up a fry, then put it back down. You think that makes up for anything? No, but it's all I've got left. They sat in silence for a while. The diner was nearly empty, just them and an old man at the counter reading a newspaper. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and unforgiving. Finally, Nico spoke. Mom found your letter. Roman's head snapped up. She told you? She left it on the kitchen counter. I saw it when I went over there yesterday. Did she say anything about it? No, but she looked tired, more tired than usual. Roman's face crumpled. I shouldn't have written it. Probably not, Elena said. But you did. And now she has to deal with it. I wasn't trying to burden her. That's what you do, though. You burden people. You show up, dump all your regrets and apologies on them, and then expect them to carry it for you. Roman flinched. You're right. Stop agreeing with us, Nico snapped. It's not helpful. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Something that isn't just you're right and I'm sorry. Something that proves you actually understand what you did instead of just accepting it because it's easier than fighting back. Roman looked at his son, really looked at him, and saw the anger and pain and desperate need for something, anything, that felt real. You want to know what I understand? Roman said, his voice low. I understand that I destroyed your childhood. I understand that I taught you to expect abandonment from everyone you love. I understand that I made your mother into a single parent, who had to be twice as strong because I wasn't there. And I understand that no amount of apologies or explanations will ever undo that damage. Nico's jaw tightened. Keep going. I understand that you're sitting here with me, not because you care about me, but because you need to look me in the face and confirm that I'm not worth grieving. And I understand that when I die, you're going to feel relief more than sadness. And that's my fault. That's all my fault. Elena's voice came out quiet. Do you wish we hadn't let you back in? Roman thought about it. Sometimes. When I see how much pain this is causing you, I wish I'd just died alone somewhere and let you keep thinking I was already dead. But I'm selfish enough to be glad you gave me this chance. Even if it hurts you, even if it doesn't fix anything, I'm glad I got to see who you became. Nico stood up abruptly. I need to go. Okay. Don't follow me. I won't. Nico walked out, the bell above the door chiming as he left. Elena watched him go, then turned back to Roman. He's going to break eventually, she said. All that anger can't last forever. I know. When he does, don't try to comfort him. Just let him feel it. Okay. Elena picked up her coat. I'm leaving too, but I'll see you again. When? I don't know. When I'm ready. She left, and Roman sat alone in the diner with cold coffee and the check. He paid it and walked outside into the late afternoon sun. Vivian was supposed to pick him up in an hour, so he walked. His legs felt weak, his chest tight, but he kept moving. He ended up at a small park a few blocks away. There were kids on the playground, their parents watching from benches. He sat down on one and watched them play, thinking about Elena and Nico at that age. He'd missed all of this, the scraped knees and playground fights, and the pure, uncomplicated joy of being a kid. He'd traded it for money and power, and a woman who didn't even stick around when things got hard. A little girl ran past him, chasing a ball. She stopped, picked it up, and looked at him. Are you sad? She asked. Roman almost laughed. Yeah, a little. Why? Because I made some bad choices a long time ago, and I can't fix them. The girl tilted her head, considering this. My mom says you can't change the past, but you can change what you do next. Your mom's smart. I know. The girl smiled and ran off. Roman sat there for a long time after she left, thinking about what she'd said. He couldn't change the past, but he could change what he did next. The problem was, he didn't have much next left. When Vivian picked him up, she didn't ask how it went. She just drove him home in silence, and Roman was grateful for it. That night he started writing. Not a letter this time, but a record. He wrote down everything. The crimes he'd committed, the people he'd hurt, the deals he'd made. He wrote about Isabel and the 15 years he'd wasted with her. He wrote about Vivian and the family he'd destroyed. He wrote until his hand cramped and his eyes burned, and then he kept writing. When he was done, he had 30 pages of confessions. He put them in an envelope, sealed it, and wrote Elena and Nico's names on the front. He'd give it to Vivian when the time came. They could decide what to do with it after he was gone. The next morning, Vivian found him in the kitchen, looking worse than usual. His skin had a gray tint to it, and he was moving slow like every step hurt. You need to go to the hospital, she said. I'm fine. You're not fine. You look half dead. I am half dead. Roman, I'm not going to the hospital. I'm not spending my last days in some sterile room with machines beeping at me. If I'm going to die, I'm doing it here. Vivian stared at him. Here? In my house? If you'll let me. That's not fair. I know. You don't get to put that on me. You don't get to die in my house and make me the one who has to deal with it. Roman looked at her, and for the first time since he'd shown up, he saw something close to desperation in his face. I don't have anywhere else to go. If you want me to leave, I'll leave. But I'm asking you, please, let me stay. Vivian felt something twist in her chest. She wanted to say no. She wanted to throw him out and let him die alone in some motel room somewhere. But looking at him now, broken and sick and pathetic, she couldn't do it. Fine, she said, but if you die here, you're doing it quietly. I'm not dealing with drama. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm doing this because I don't want your death on my conscience. Roman nodded and went back to his coffee. Vivian left for work, but all day she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just made a terrible mistake. That weekend, Elena and Nico came over for dinner. It was Vivian's idea, a normal family dinner, just the three of them, like they used to have before Roman showed up. But when they arrived, Roman was sitting in the living room, and the whole thing felt wrong. Is he eating with us? Nico asked. Vivian shook her head. No, he's going to stay in there. Good. They sat down at the dining table, and Vivian served the food she'd spent all afternoon making. For a few minutes, they ate in silence. Then Elena spoke. How long is he going to be here? I don't know, Vivian said. His doctor said weeks, maybe a month. It's hard to say. And you're okay with that? No, but what am I supposed to do? Kick a dying man out onto the street? Yes, Nico said. That's exactly what you should do. I can't. Why not? Vivian set down her fork. Because as much as I hate him, I can't be that person. I can't be the one who sends him away to die alone. He deserves it. Maybe. But I don't deserve the guilt that would come with it. Elena reached across the table and took her mother's hand. We don't want you to have to do this. I know, but it's not your choice. It's mine. They finished dinner without talking much after that. When they were done, Elena and Nico helped clean up, and then they said their goodbyes. On the way out, Nico stopped in the doorway. Mom? Yeah? You're stronger than he ever was. You know that, right? Vivian felt tears prick at her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. I know. After they left, she went into the living room. Roman was still sitting there, staring at nothing. They hate me, he said. Can you blame them? No. Vivian sat down in the chair across from him. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay? Why did you really come back? And don't give me that line about wanting forgiveness. What's the real reason? Roman was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I was scared of dying alone. Because I didn't want to go out with nothing and no one, just the memory of everything I'd destroyed. I thought if I could see you and the kids one more time, maybe it would mean something. Maybe I wouldn't feel so empty. And do you? Feel less empty? Roman looked at her, his eyes red. No, I feel worse because now I can see exactly what I threw away, and I know I'll never get it back. Vivian nodded slowly. Good. You should feel that. You should carry it all the way to the end. I will. She stood up and walked toward the stairs, then stopped. Roman? Yeah? That letter you wrote me. I read it. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. I'm not finished. Her voice was hard. You said leaving me was the biggest mistake of your life. But you're wrong. The biggest mistake was coming back and making me relive it. She went upstairs before he could respond, leaving him alone in the dark. The next few weeks passed in a strange, suffocating rhythm. Roman got weaker. Some days he could barely get out of bed. Vivian hired a nurse to come in twice a week to check on him, but mostly she just stayed out of his way. Elena and Nico visited a few more times, but the visits got shorter, the conversations thinner. There wasn't much left to say. One night, Vivian was working late in her office when she heard a crash from upstairs. She ran up and found Roman on the floor of the bathroom, his face pale and sweating. I'm fine, he said, but his voice was weak. You're not fine. She helped him up, her hands under his arms, and was shocked by how light he felt. He was wasting away right in front of her. She got him back to bed and sat on the edge of it, her hands shaking. You need to go to the hospital. No. Roman, you're dying. I know. That's why I don't want to go. I want to die here, not in some hospital room. Vivian felt tears burn her eyes, but she blinked them back. I can't watch you die. Then don't. Just let me stay here until it's over. That's not fair to me. I know. Nothing about this is fair to you, but I'm asking anyway. She wanted to scream at him. She wanted to call an ambulance and let them take him away, but instead she just nodded. Okay, you can stay. Thank you. Stop thanking me. I'm not doing this because I want to. She left him there and went back downstairs. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat in the dark crying for the first time since he'd shown up. Not for him, but for herself. For the girl she'd been when she married him, full of hope and love and stupidity. For the woman she'd become, hardened and scarred, and carrying wounds that would never fully heal. Upstairs, Roman lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He could feel his body shutting down piece by piece. The pain was constant now, a dull throb that the medication barely touched. He knew he didn't have much time left. He thought about Elena and Nico, about the look in their eyes the last time he'd seen them. They hadn't said goodbye, but he knew they wouldn't be back. They'd gotten what they needed from him, confirmation that he was exactly as broken as they'd thought. And now they were done. He thought about Vivian, about the way she'd looked at him when she said coming back was his biggest mistake. She was right. He should have stayed gone. He should have died alone in some anonymous place and let them keep believing he'd been dead for 20 years. But he'd been too selfish for that. He'd needed to see them one more time, even if it destroyed what little peace they'd found. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but the pain kept him awake. Somewhere downstairs he could hear Vivian moving around, and he wondered if she was crying. He hoped she wasn't. She'd cried enough for him already. The next morning, Elena called Vivian. "How is he?" "Bad, really bad." "Do we need to come over?" Vivian hesitated. "I don't know. Do you want to?" Elena was quiet for a moment. "No, I don't think I do." "Okay." "Is that terrible?" "No, honey. It's honest. What about you? Are you okay?" Vivian looked up at the ceiling, toward the room where Roman was dying. "I will be. Eventually." They talked for a few more minutes, and then Elena hung up. Vivian sat at the kitchen table, her coffee going cold, and tried to figure out how she'd ended up here, playing nurse to the man who'd destroyed her life. She didn't have an answer. That night, Roman called her upstairs. She found him sitting up in bed, looking more alert than he had in days. "I need to give you something," he said. He handed her the envelope with Elena and Nico's names on it. "What is this?" "Everything I did, everyone I hurt, all of it written down. I want you to give it to them after I'm gone." Vivian stared at the envelope. "Why?" "Because they deserve the whole truth, not just the parts I was willing to say out loud." "You think this is going to help them?" "No, but I think they need it anyway." Vivian took the envelope and set it on the dresser. "Anything else?" Roman looked at her for a long moment. "I wish I could go back and choose you. Every single time, I wish I could choose you." Vivian's face didn't change. "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." She left him there and went back downstairs, the envelope heavy in her hands. She set it on her desk and tried not to think about what was inside. Roman died 3 days later. Vivian found him in the morning. She'd brought him tea, like she'd been doing every day for the past 2 weeks, and when she opened the door, she knew immediately that he was gone. The room was too quiet, too still. Roman lay on his back, his eyes closed, his hands folded on his chest like he'd arranged himself that way on purpose. She set the tea down on the nightstand and stood there for a minute, just looking at him. He looked smaller in death than he had in life, like dying had taken the last bit of presence he'd had left. She didn't cry, she just stood there, feeling nothing except a dull sense of finality. She called Elena first. "Mom?" "He's gone." There was a long pause. "When?" "Sometime last night. I found him this morning." Another pause. "Are you okay?" "I don't know yet." "Do you need me to come over?" "Not yet. I need to make some calls first. I'll let you know." "Okay? I love you, Mom." "I love you too." Vivian hung up and called Nico next. The conversation was shorter, quieter. Nico didn't ask if she was okay. He just said he'd come by later and hung up. Then she called the nurse, who called the doctor, who sent someone to confirm what Vivian already knew. Roman DeLuca was dead. The man who'd ruled half the city with fear and money and violence had died in a guest bedroom in his ex-wife's house, alone except for the woman he'd destroyed. The irony wasn't lost on Vivian. By the time Elena and Nico arrived, the body had been taken away. The guest room was empty, the bed stripped, the window open to air out the smell of sickness and death. Vivian was in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. Elena sat down next to her. "How are you holding up?" "I don't know. I thought I'd feel something. Relief, maybe. Or anger. But I just feel tired." Nico leaned against the counter, his arms crossed. "What happens now?" "There's a funeral home handling the arrangements. He left instructions. Cremation, no service, no burial plot. He said he didn't deserve one. He's right, Nico said. Elena shot him a look. Nico. What? I'm just saying what we're all thinking. Vivian looked up at her son. He left something for you, both of you. She went to her office and came back with the envelope. She set it on the table between them. What is it? Elena asked. He called it a confession. Everything he did, everyone he hurt. He wanted you to have it after he was gone. Nico stared at the envelope like it might explode. I don't want it. You don't have to read it now, or ever, but it's yours if you want it. Elena reached out and touched the envelope, then pulled her hand back. Did you read it? No. He said it was for you two, not me. What if we don't want to know? Then you don't have to. You can burn it if you want, but I promised him I'd give it to you, so here it is. They sat in silence for a while, the envelope sitting on the table like an accusation. Finally, Elena picked it up. I'll take it, she said. I don't know if I'll read it, but I'll keep it. Nico shook his head. I don't want anything from him. You don't have to read it, but if you change your mind, I'll have it. I won't change my mind. Elena slipped the envelope into her bag and looked at her mother. Are you going to the funeral home? Tomorrow, to sign some papers and pick up the ashes. What are you going to do with them? Vivian hadn't thought about it. I don't know. Throw them in the ocean, maybe, or just leave them at the funeral home. I don't really care. He'd probably want you to scatter them somewhere meaningful, Elena said. He doesn't get what he wants anymore. Nico almost smiled at that. Good. They stayed for another hour, drinking coffee and not talking much. When they left, Vivian went upstairs to the guest room and stood in the doorway. The room was clean now, sterile, like Roman had never been there at all. But she could still feel him in the walls, in the air, in the weight of everything he'd left behind. She closed the door and didn't open it again. The next day, Vivian went to the funeral home and signed the papers. They gave her a simple black urn with Roman's ashes inside. It was lighter than she expected, and that made her angry for some reason. A whole life reduced to a few pounds of ash and bone. She put the urn in the trunk of her car and drove to the ocean. It was a cold, gray day, the kind of day that matched how she felt inside. She parked at a beach access point and walked down to the water, carrying the urn under her arm like it was groceries. When she reached the sand, she stopped and looked out at the waves. She'd thought about bringing Elena and Nico, but this felt like something she needed to do alone. Not for Roman, but for herself. She needed to close this chapter once and for all. She opened the urn and walked to the edge of the water. The waves lapped at her shoes, cold and persistent. She upended the urn and watched the ashes scatter into the surf, mixing with the foam and disappearing into the gray-green water. When it was empty, she stood there for a minute, waiting to feel something. Closure, maybe. Or peace. But all she felt was the same tired emptiness she'd been carrying for weeks. She turned and walked back to her car, leaving the empty urn on a bench for someone else to deal with. 2 weeks later, Elena called. I read it, she said. The letter? Yeah. And? Elena's voice was thick. It's worse than I thought. The things he did, Mom, some of it is really bad. I know. How did you stay with him for as long as you did? Vivian leaned back in her chair. I didn't know about most of it. And the parts I did know, I convinced myself were necessary, that he was protecting us. Were you scared of him? Sometimes, but mostly I was just scared of being alone with 2 kids and no money. That's not a good reason to stay. I know that now, but back then I thought it was the only reason that mattered. Elena was quiet for a moment. Nico doesn't want to read it. He says he doesn't need to know the details to know Roman was a bad person. He's probably right. But I needed to know. I needed to see it all written out so I could stop wondering if maybe I was being too hard on him. And now I know I wasn't. If anything, I wasn't hard enough. What are you going to do with it? I don't know. Keep it, I guess. Maybe someday I'll show it to my kids, if I ever have any, so they know where they came from. You don't have to carry that, Elena. You can let it go. I know, but I think I need to carry it for a while longer, until it doesn't hurt anymore. They talked for a little while longer, and then Elena said she had to go. After she hung up, Vivian sat at her desk and thought about the letter, about all the terrible things Roman had written down, and she was glad she hadn't read it. She'd lived through enough of his damage. She didn't need to catalog it. A month after Roman died, Vivian started having trouble sleeping. She'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying the last few months over and over. She kept thinking about the look on his face when she told him coming back was his biggest mistake. She kept wondering if she'd been too cruel, if she should have shown him some measure of kindness at the end. But then she'd remember the years she'd spent raising Elena and Nico alone, the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, the fear and uncertainty and grinding work it had taken to build a life after he left. And she'd remember that she didn't owe him kindness. She didn't owe him anything. One night, she got out of bed and went downstairs. She poured herself a glass of whiskey and sat on the couch in the dark, and for the first time since Roman died, she let herself cry. Not for him, but for herself. For the girl she'd been when she married him, full of hope and love and trust. For the woman she'd become, hardened and scarred and carrying wounds that would never fully heal. She cried until she had nothing left, and then she went back to bed and slept better than she had in weeks. 6 weeks after Roman's death, Nico showed up at Vivian's house unannounced. She opened the door to find him standing there, his eyes red and his jaw tight. "I need to talk," he said. "Come in." They sat in the living room, and Nico stared at his hands for a long time before he spoke. "I keep thinking about him," he said finally. "About the things he said at that cafe, about how he thought about us every day but never came back." "Okay. And I keep going back and forth between being angry and being, I don't know, sad, I guess. Like I'm mourning someone I never really knew." Vivian nodded. "That's normal." "Is it? Because it feels messed up. Why should I mourn him? He didn't deserve it." "You're not mourning him. You're mourning the father you should have had, the one who stayed." Nico's face crumpled, and he covered it with his hands. "I hate that he still has this power over me. I hate that he's dead, and I'm still thinking about him." Vivian moved to sit beside him, putting her arm around his shoulders. "It's going to take time. There's no timeline for this kind of thing." "How long did it take you?" "I'm still working on it." Nico looked at her, his eyes wet. "Does it get easier?" "Yeah, it does. Not all at once, but gradually. One day you'll realize you haven't thought about him in a week, then a month, then longer." "What if I don't want to forget him? What if forgetting him means he wins?" "He doesn't win either way, Nico. You're here. You're building a life. That's what matters." Nico nodded slowly, wiping his eyes. "I met someone." Vivian smiled. "Yeah? Her name's Sarah. She's really different from anyone I've dated before. She's patient. She doesn't take my crap, but she also doesn't push me. And I keep waiting for her to leave." "Have you told her about Roman?" "Some of it. She knows he wasn't around. She doesn't know the whole story yet." "You should tell her. When you're ready." "What if it scares her off?" "Then she's not the right person. But I don't think it will." Nico stayed for another hour, and when he left, he looked lighter somehow. Like talking about it had loosened something that had been wound too tight. 3 months after Roman's death, Elena got engaged. She called Vivian from a restaurant, her voice bright and breathless. "Mom, he proposed." Vivian felt something loosen in her chest. "That's wonderful, honey. I'm so happy for you. His name is Marcus. I've been seeing him for about a year. I know I should have introduced you sooner, but I wanted to be sure first." "It's okay. I understand." "I want you to meet him. Can we come over this weekend?" "Of course." That Saturday, Elena showed up with Marcus, a tall man with kind eyes and an easy smile. He shook Vivian's hand and looked her in the eye when he spoke, and Vivian liked him immediately. Over dinner, Marcus told stories that made Elena laugh, and Vivian watched the way her daughter leaned into him, comfortable and happy. At one point, Elena excused herself to the bathroom, and Marcus turned to Vivian. "I know about her father," he said quietly, "what he did. Elena told me everything." Vivian nodded. "And you're still here." "Of course. What her father did doesn't define who she is." "You'd be surprised how many people don't see it that way." Marcus met her eyes. "I'm not those people. I'm in this for the long haul. I'm not going anywhere." Vivian felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. "Good. Because if you hurt her, I will make you regret it." Marcus smiled. "I believe you, and I respect that." When Elena came back, Vivian looked at her daughter and saw something she hadn't seen in years. Hope. Real, unguarded hope that things could be good and stay good. 6 months after Roman's death, Vivian decided to sell the house. It had too many ghosts in it, too many memories she didn't want to carry anymore. She bought a smaller place across town, something clean and modern with no history except what she'd built there herself. Elena and Nico helped her move, along with Marcus and Sarah. Together, they packed up 20 years of Vivian's life and moved it into a future that had nothing to do with Roman DeLuca. When they were done, they ordered pizza and sat on the floor of Vivian's new living room, exhausted and sweaty and laughing about something stupid Marcus had said. And in that moment, Vivian felt something she hadn't felt in longer than she could remember. Peace. Not the kind of peace that came from forgiveness or closure or any of the things people said you were supposed to find after trauma. Just the quiet, steady peace of knowing she'd survived. That she'd taken the worst thing that had ever happened to her and turned it into something that couldn't destroy her. A year after Roman's death, Vivian started thinking about what came next. She had a business that was doing well, investments that would keep her comfortable for the rest of her life, and 2 children who were building their own futures. But she felt restless, like there was something else she was supposed to be doing. One night she was reading the news and came across a story about a woman who'd escaped an abusive relationship with her 3 kids and nowhere to go. The woman had ended up in a shelter that was overcrowded and underfunded, and the story detailed how hard it was to find support when you were trying to start over with nothing. Vivian read the article twice, and by the time she finished, she knew what she needed to do. She called Elena the next morning. "I'm starting a foundation," she said. "What kind of foundation?" "For women and kids leaving bad situations. Housing, legal support, job training, counseling. Everything I wished I'd had when your father left." Elena was quiet for a moment. "Mom, that's amazing. I want you and Nico to help, if you're interested." "Of course I'm interested. What do you need?" Over the next 6 months, Vivian, Elena, and Nico built the Second Chances Foundation from the ground up. Nico handled the legal side, making sure everything was structured correctly. Elena ran fundraising events and brought in donors. And Vivian poured her money and her time and her heart into creating something that would help people who were where she'd been, scared and alone and trying to figure out how to survive. The foundation opened 18 months after Roman's death. At the opening event, Vivian stood in front of a room full of donors and community leaders and people who'd already been helped by the foundation's programs. And she told them the truth. "I started this foundation because I know what it's like to feel trapped," she said. "I know what it's like to wake up one day and realize the person you trusted most in the world has destroyed everything you built together. And I know what it's like to have to start over from nothing, with 2 kids depending on you and no idea how you're going to make it work." She paused, looking out at the crowd. "But I also know what it's like to survive, to take that pain and that fear and turn it into something stronger. And I want to make sure that other people have the support they need to do the same thing, because no one should have to do it alone." The room erupted in applause, and Vivian stepped down from the podium. Elena and Nico were waiting for her, and they wrapped her in a hug that felt like coming home. 2 years after Roman's death, Elena got married. It was a small ceremony in a garden, just family and close friends. Vivian walked her daughter down the aisle, and when the officiant asked who gave this woman to be married, Vivian said, "I do," and meant it with every cell in her body. She'd given Elena everything, her strength, her resilience, her refusal to quit even when things got hard. And watching her daughter marry a man who looked at her like she hung the moon, Vivian knew it had been worth it. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt, it had all been worth it to see Elena standing there, whole and happy and unbroken. At the reception, Nico gave a toast. He stood up, his glass raised, and looked at his sister. "Elena's always been the strong one," he said, "the one who kept it together when everything was falling apart. And I used to think that was just who she was, naturally tough, naturally resilient. But I realized something recently. She's strong because she had to be. Because Mom taught her how. And because she refused to let the people who hurt her define what she deserved." He turned to look at Vivian. "Mom, you gave us everything. You showed us what it looks like to survive something that should have broken you and come out the other side stronger. And I don't say this enough, but thank you. For not giving up. For not letting him destroy what we could become." Vivian felt tears slide down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. She just nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Nico raised his glass. To Elena and Marcus, and to second chances, and to the people who stick around when it gets hard. Everyone drank, and the party went on. But Vivian stepped outside for a minute, needing air and space and quiet. She stood in the garden where Elena had just gotten married, looking up at the stars, and thought about Roman. She didn't miss him. She didn't forgive him. But she also didn't hate him anymore. He'd been a broken man who'd made terrible choices, and he'd paid for them. And now he was gone, and she was here, surrounded by the family she'd built from the ashes of what he'd destroyed. 3 years after Roman's death, Nico and Sarah had a baby, a little girl they named June after Vivian's mother. When Vivian held her granddaughter for the first time, she felt something crack open inside her chest. Not pain, but the opposite. Like something that had been locked up tight for decades was finally allowed to breathe. "She's perfect," Vivian whispered. Nico smiled, tired but happy. "Yeah, she is." "Are you scared?" Vivian asked, "about being a father?" Nico looked at his daughter, his expression serious. "Terrified. But I know what not to do, at least. And that's a start." Vivian touched his cheek. "You're going to be a great father, because you know what it feels like to need one." Nico's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't look away. "I'm not going to be like him." "I know you won't." And she did know. She could see it in the way Nico looked at June, the way he held her like she was made of glass and gold. He was already a better father than Roman had ever been, just by showing up. Sarah came over and put her arm around Nico's waist. "We were thinking about what to tell her, about Roman, I mean, when she's old enough to ask." Vivian considered this. Tell her the truth, that her grandfather made terrible choices and hurt a lot of people. But also tell her that her father broke that cycle, that he chose to be different. "That feels like a lot to put on a kid," Sarah said. "It is, but it's better than lying, and it's better than pretending the past didn't happen." Nico nodded. "We'll figure it out when the time comes." 4 years after Roman's death, Elena had a son. She named him Leo, and when Vivian asked if the name meant anything, Elena just shrugged. "I like lions," she said. "They're strong, and Leo sounds like someone who won't take crap from anyone." Vivian laughed. "He's going to fit right in with this family then." Elena looked at her mother, her expression soft. "Do you ever think about him? Roman?" "Sometimes, not often." "Do you regret letting him stay at the end?" Vivian thought about it. "No, I regret a lot of things, but not that. It was the right thing to do, even if it was hard." "Do you think we should tell them?" Elena nodded toward Leo, sleeping in her arms. "The kids, I mean, about their grandfather?" "That's up to you. But if you do, tell them the truth. Don't make him better than he was, and don't make him worse. Just tell them he was a man who made terrible choices and spent the rest of his life regretting them. What if they ask why you stayed with him? Tell them I didn't know how to leave, and that by the time I figured it out, I had 2 kids to protect, and that became more important than anything else." Elena nodded slowly. "That's a good answer. It's the only answer I have." 5 years after Roman's death, the Second Chances Foundation had helped over 300 families. Vivian spent most of her time there now, working directly with the women who came through the doors looking for help. Some of them reminded her of herself, scared but determined, broken but not defeated. Others were worse off than she'd ever been, carrying trauma that went back generations. One afternoon, a woman named Maria came in with her 2 daughters. She was thin and pale, with bruises on her arms she tried to hide with long sleeves. The girls were quiet, watchful, the way kids got when they'd learned to disappear. Vivian sat down with Maria and listened to her story. It was familiar in all the ways that mattered. A husband who'd started out charming and ended up controlling, then violent. Years of trying to make it work for the kids' sake. Finally, the moment when Maria realized staying would kill her, either literally or in all the ways that mattered. "I don't have anywhere to go," Maria said, her voice shaking. "I don't have money. I don't have family. I need help." Vivian reached across the table and took her hand. "You came to the right place. We're going to help you." Over the next few months, Vivian watched Maria transform. The foundation got her into temporary housing, connected her with a lawyer who helped her file for divorce and a restraining order, and enrolled her in a job training program. The girls started smiling again, started acting like kids instead of soldiers. 6 months after Maria first walked through the door, she got a job as an administrative assistant at a law firm. It wasn't much, but it was enough. She moved into her own apartment with the girls, and when she came back to thank Vivian, she was crying. "You saved my life," Maria said. Vivian shook her head. "You saved your own life. I just gave you the tools to do it. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't have to. Just pay it forward. When you're stable and strong, help someone else who's where you were." Maria nodded, still crying. "I will. I promise." After she left, Vivian sat in her office and thought about Roman, about how his choices had led her here, to this moment, helping people he would have either ignored or exploited. There was something satisfying about that, about taking the worst thing he'd ever done to her and turning it into something that saved other people. 7 years after Roman's death, Vivian woke up one morning and realized she was happy. Not the kind of happy that came from achieving something or checking off a goal, but the quiet, steady happy that came from being at peace with who she was and what she'd built. She had a business that was thriving. She had a foundation that was changing lives. She had 2 children who'd grown into remarkable adults and 2 grandchildren who lit up her world. And she had herself, whole and strong and unbroken, despite everything that had tried to break her. That night, she took Elena and Nico out to dinner. They brought the kids, and the restaurant was loud and chaotic and perfect. At one point, Leo knocked over his juice and started crying, and June tried to comfort him by offering him her breadstick. Elena and Nico were both exhausted, their faces showing the wear of parenthood, but they were happy. Vivian looked around the table and felt her chest swell with something that might have been pride or love, or just deep, bone-deep gratitude. "Thank you," she said suddenly. Nico looked up. "For what?" "For being here. For surviving. For becoming people I'm proud to know." Elena reached across the table and took her mother's hand. "We wouldn't be here without you." "Yes, you would. You're stronger than you think." "We got it from you." Vivian smiled. "Maybe, but you made it your own." They finished dinner and walked out into the warm summer night. Vivian carried June on her hip while Elena held Leo's hand and Nico walked beside them, talking about something Sarah had said that made him laugh. And in that moment, Vivian understood something she hadn't before. Roman had tried to destroy them. He'd walked away and left them with nothing but pain and questions and wounds that should have broken them. But they'd survived. More than that, they'd thrived. They'd taken the ashes of what he'd burned down and built something beautiful. And that was the real ending to Roman DeLuca's story. Not his deathbed apologies or his desperate attempts at redemption, but the family he'd left behind, strong and whole and completely, utterly done with him. 10 years after Roman died, Vivian sat in her office at the foundation and looked at a photo on her desk. It was from Elena's wedding, all of them together, smiling in the garden. She studied the faces in the photo, the joy and love and hard-won peace, and she thought about how far they'd come. There was a knock on her door, and Vivian looked up to see a young woman standing there, her eyes red and her hands shaking. "Are you Vivian Cole?" the woman asked. "I am. I need help. I heard you help women who need to leave." Vivian stood up and gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit down. Tell me what's going on." The woman sat, and as she started talking, Vivian listened. This was the work now. Not dwelling on the past, not holding on to anger or hurt, but helping people who needed what she'd needed all those years ago. Roman DeLuca had been a mafia boss, a feared man, someone who'd controlled half the city with violence and money. But in the end, none of that mattered. He died alone, broken, and full of regrets. And the family he'd destroyed had gone on without him, building lives that had nothing to do with his legacy. That was the lesson Vivian had learned, the one she tried to pass on to every person who walked through the foundation's doors. You don't have to be defined by the worst thing that happened to you. You don't have to carry someone else's damage forever. You can survive. You can rebuild. And you can come out the other side stronger than you ever thought possible. The woman across from her was still talking, telling her story through tears, and Vivian listened with the full weight of her attention. Because she knew what it felt like to be where this woman was. She knew the fear and the shame and the desperate hope that somewhere, somehow, there was a way out. And she was that way out. Not because she was perfect or had all the answers, but because she'd survived and learned and refused to let her pain be wasted. When the woman finished talking, Vivian leaned forward and looked her in the eye. "You did the right thing by coming here," she said, "and I'm going to help you. We're going to figure this out together." The woman's face crumpled with relief, and Vivian reached across the desk to squeeze her hand. That night, after the woman left with a plan and a place to stay, and the first real hope she'd had in years, Vivian sat alone in her office and thought about Roman one last time. She let herself remember the boy she'd fallen in love with, before the money and the power and the choices that destroyed them both. She let herself remember what it felt like to believe in him, to trust him, to think they'd build something together that would last. And then she let him go. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, and when she opened them again, she felt lighter. The weight she'd been carrying for so long, the anger, the hurt, the desperate need to understand why he'd done what he did, finally lifted. It didn't matter anymore. Roman was gone, and she was still here. Still fighting, still building, still refusing to let the worst moment of her life define the rest of it. She picked up her phone and sent a text to Elena and Nico. "Love you both. Proud of who you've become." Elena responded first. "Love you too, Mom. We're proud of you." Then Nico. "Back at you. You're the strongest person I know." Vivian smiled and set her phone down. She looked around her office, the walls covered with photos of families the foundation had helped, the awards they'd won, the letters from people thanking her for saving their lives. This was her legacy. Not Roman's empire built on fear and violence, but her kingdom built on compassion and second chances. And it was better than anything Roman had ever created because it actually helped people instead of destroying them. She stood up, turned off the lights, and locked the office behind her. Tomorrow, there would be more work to do, more people to help, more lives to rebuild. But tonight, she was going home to her quiet house, her clean space, her life that finally felt like it belonged to her. Roman DeLuca's story was over. He'd lived as a king and died as a cautionary tale, a reminder that power without humanity was worthless, that fear was no substitute for love, and that abandoning your family in pursuit of something shinier would always end in regret. But Vivian Cole's story was still being written, and every chapter she added was proof that you could survive the unsurvivable, that you could take the broken pieces of your life and build something stronger, and that the people who stayed and fought and refused to give up were always more powerful than the ones who ran away. She drove home through the quiet streets, past the places where Roman had once held court, past the buildings and businesses that had forgotten his name. The city had moved on, just like she had. And somewhere in the dark water of the ocean, where she'd scattered his ashes, Roman DeLuca had become exactly what he deserved to be. Nothing but dust and memory, and a lesson learned the hard way. Vivian parked in her driveway and sat in the car for a moment, looking at her house with its warm lights and quiet promise of peace. This was what winning looked like. Not revenge or forgiveness or some grand moment of clarity, but simply surviving and building something better. She got out of the car, walked to her front door, and stepped inside. And that was the end of Roman's hold on her life, and the beginning of everything that came after.